Most companies are winging their sales team operations. No real systems, no data visibility, just vibes and Slack messages. And it shows missed targets, high turnover, and inconsistent revenue every month. In this video, I'll walk you through how to run a sales team more effectively than 99% of businesses out there using the exact systems that I've built to scale teams that consistently close over 40 and 50% and generate over $1.6 million a month in revenue. So if you're a closer looking to lead, a sales manager trying to grow your team, or a founder who's tired of being the only one driving revenue, this is going to be a game changer. My name's Jack, and over the last 2 years, I've built and managed over a dozen high-performing sales teams generating more than $20 million in revenue. I've coached and managed over 320 salespeople, and I've seen the ins and outs of what makes sales teams succeed and fail at scale. From leading teams inside some of the world's largest fitness coaching companies to building and scaling elite B2C teams from the ground up, I've been deep in the trenches fixing the exact issues that we're gonna break down today. So let's get into it. Skill number one, understanding how to ethically indoctrinate your sales team. Now, to quote the billionaire investor Peter Thiel, no company has a culture, every company is a culture. A startup is just a team of people on a mission, and a good culture is what that looks like on the inside. So your salespeople need to be obsessed. If sales reps aren't obsessed, their prospects' doubts will dominate, and they'll sound fake, they'll push products instead of actual solutions, and then they'll fail to close. So for example, if the prospect says, I'm not sure if this program will work for me, the average salesperson will internally believe, oh no, he doesn't believe in it, he won't buy, I'm not gonna get my commission, and then they'll get engulfed by the prospect's frame. Whereas an obsessed, true believer salesperson will think, oh wow, he just doesn't know how good this is. And then they'll feel in their heart of hearts and in their bones that they know exactly what to say to knife through the objection with absolute conviction. Because at the end of the day, sales is conviction. If reps don't see the offer as a significant transformation, they'll push a product and they won't push a solution, right? They'll have no buy-in, which means that they will never get results at scale. So they'll constantly feel off, they'll feel slimy, and what they'll do is they'll end up tanking your numbers. Because at the end of the day, obsession drives performance, where your salespeople will actually fight for the business like their own, right? They'll have a founder's mindset and even end up turning down 3 times better paid jobs to actually stay with you, right? So reps need to be obsessed. They've got to love the offer and who they're selling to like it's their life. They need to be real. They need to sound like themselves, not sound like a fake telemarketer. They need to sound authentic, congruent, and absolutely certain. So everything they say must feel like the truth. They need to provide the energy to help the prospects see the reality that they can't see, right? Because reps will take the path of least resistance just based on their self-image. If they feel inauthentic or unvaluable, they'll slack off and struggle to show up, and they'll find it very hard to behave in any other way, right? So you need to help rewire their brain to see themselves as fanatics for the business who feel that they have a significant sense of belonging for the offer, so that they'll sell with fire. So to indoctrinate your sales reps, first you want to get them to see client fulfillment. Right? So make your salespeople watch fulfillment in action and actually join at least one of, say, a client group meeting or whatever fulfillment mechanism that you have, because they need to see, say for example, a coach or someone in the fulfillment team go in for 45 minutes helping that client on mindset or solving a technical problem that will actually satisfy the client and make their day. Or you want to show a testimonial of a client whose life actually flipped, because then the salesperson will think, okay, this is actually real, it works. It's actually changing these clients' lives who I spoke to on a sales call like 30 days ago. This is how they get 150% bought in, by just seeing the transformation firsthand. Now, second, you want to show them the magic of the ad set. So sit down with them, go through the ad sets, go through testimonials and also the marketing collateral until they're psychologically obsessed, like there's a gravitational pull towards the business and the one big idea. So what you want to do is break it down for them, show the prospects deep desire that, say for example, that they want financial freedom, they want cash, or that the big idea is that, we're tapping into billion-dollar markets. You take 1 to 2% with 2 hours a day, whatever the unique mechanism is. What this will do is align the reps with the offer's core value proposition and actually make them fanatics who believe in its power. And third, you want to celebrate like crazy. So when a rep goes to the end of the earth to close a prospect because they know that the service or the program will actually change their life, you want to go nuts for that person and you want to do it in public. You want to say that you actually fought for that client and now their life's changed. So you're a legend, man. And actually do it in front of the team. This is critical because what it will do is it'll make them feel like heroes. It'll keep everyone hungry for that approval because at the end of the day, people want to fit in with a tribe and inhabit the good traits that are required. Now, fourth, you want to be able to wear both hats. So you want to be the guide and the drill sergeant because they need both. As a supportive guide, you want to be able to call them on a Sunday night, talk through their issues affecting their sales or anything diving into their self-image or any personal issues that are keeping them from being their best. And then as a drill sergeant, the next day, you need to be able to call out their BS if they're out of KPIs. Say the close rate KPI is 20-something%. If their close rate is 14% and everyone else is at 33, you want to be able to tell them, man, you've got the same leads as everyone else. There's no excuses. You don't want to let reps act incongruent or tell themselves stories for not closing, right? Because at the end of the day, they're begging for someone that they respect to see through their crap and actually call them out for it, right? Because it's going to give them that level of clarity that they've always been looking for. So for example, if they sound slimy or say, oh, the prospects weren't ready, you want to be able to hit back and say, man, I see right through that. Stop making up problems and get to the reason why and actually help the prospect and actually identify to the salesperson the specific cause and effect skill deficiency that caused them to actually not get that sale. Because a lot of this generation of salespeople, especially the younger ones, they lack a strong father figure. Too many people are out there co-signing their BS, letting them act fake or make excuses and just letting them get away with it. So you want to be able to lead both ways and that they'll go to the end of the earth for you. Now, this is the reason why I've had salespeople consistently turn down, 2 to 3 better offers to actually stay with me so we could get them to that point once they actually got ramped up and were skilled in the account. Skill number 2, know how to strategically communicate with different levels of sales professionals. So the objective is to tailor your communication with salespeople to maintain peak culture and performance by spotting weak language, being able to inspire growth, and support A players while keeping everyone accountable. Because communication is what shapes behavior, and if it's done wrong, it breeds complacency in the team, it'll tank culture, and it'll let underperformers really set the tone and drag your team down. Poor communication will fail to inspire B players, it'll alienate A players, and it will ultimately let C players fester in your team, and the performance will stall while your competition builds a stronger team. So tailored communication is what's going to drive insane performance, right? It'll turn B players into A players and it will retain your top talent. Now, nobody is above or below anyone as a person, but sales is ultimately about results, period. So communication from a respected authority like you or the sales manager acts as a reward trigger and it'll condition the behavior that you're looking for through that positive reinforcement. Now with C players or underperformers, they will respond to strict correction, right? They need to have clear boundaries laid out for them to avoid complacency, and without firm feedback that you'll give them, they're going to continue to repeat the weak behaviors that end up tanking the culture. Now with your B players or moderate performers, they're going to respond to inspiration and coaching, right? So you want to be able to praise them for the effort paired with the actionable steps that they need to improve upon their skills, which is going to drive them to actually level up. And now with A players or top performers, what they need is they crave recognition beyond the money. And if they don't feel a sense of belonging to an elite tribe, they'll seek it elsewhere regardless of their high earnings, since they know they can make it somewhere else. Now for C players, you want to avoid hiring them in the first place, but mishires do happen. So you want to be able to effectively part ways if they can't hit KPIs during ramping, and don't waste any more time. Don't think you can change them. You do not want to have to be cured of your stubbornness through disappointment, right? The problem isn't their base, it's their potential. They'll tank your culture, they'll drag down the team, so you need to remove them professionally. Now, B players are the majority of your salespeople, your bedrock, especially your SDRs. Now, for context, I've generated 90% of client revenue with B players who had zero sales experience. They just invested in like a 5K course, but they more importantly had a ridiculous level of necessity and drive to succeed. So you don't want to rely solely on A players with experience, because B players will offer the highest level of goodwill through you giving them that support and that coaching, right? With proficiency and commitment, you can turn B players into A players, and you want to be a machine at this. Now for A players, you want to be their biggest supporter. You want to provide that identity of the gold standard sales professional on the account to them, right? You want to be able to sit down with them, remap their goals because they get bored of winning and they need new challenges to stay driven. You don't want to let them coast on skill alone, right? Otherwise they can drop to a high B player status if they lose that drive and if they lose that necessity. So don't assume A players are above admin just because they're superstars. They still have to do pipeline management or just their basic admin, right? And there's really just two options for this. Option one is you can put up with it, which I don't recommend. So you could, hire a VA to handle their admin, use a separate Slack or WhatsApp account or whatever communication platform you use to communicate with them, and effectively just QC their calls or review their calls and then hold them to either the same or higher KPIs. Now, this works for some teams, but it's a band-aid over a bullet wound if your revenue depends almost solely on them, because you don't want to let bad culture fits hold you at gunpoint. And then there's option two is don't put up with it, which is my approach. You need to put your foot down and require accountability from them. And for context, I've only ever had one A player leave over this. Essentially, he demanded that I pay for a VA for him. And then after a bit of back and forth, I obviously fired him, and then he ended up causing problems elsewhere at another company. Essentially, everyone else will come around with enough goodwill and authority. Now, building A players from B players will avoid this altogether. They'll have the right habits from the start because you help build them from the ground up. Skill number 3, run gold standard meetings. Now, meetings are what set the tone both for your culture and your team's performance. So poorly run meetings will leave your salespeople drained, it'll leave them unclear, and it'll leave them unmotivated, which will ultimately tank your results. Gold standard meetings ensure your salespeople leave feeling with a level of clarity that's required to drive consistent and insane performance month after month. Now, your meetings have hit the bullseye when your salespeople talk about the fact that when they jump on their next sales call after the meeting, they almost always make a sale. At the end of the day, you're still selling. So meetings are sales calls just with a different frame. And you need to show up 110% every single time and make your sales reps feel a level of certainty and clarity that they did not have beforehand. To set the tone as a leader, come in with a great attitude and ultimately check your ego at the door. You need to be able to communicate and be transparent with people and be direct with what they actually require to succeed, because ultimately salespeople want to perform. They don't want their leadership to be apologetic or essentially supplicate to them because they're worried that they might leave or how they might respond. So you need to be consistently providing objective feedback coming from your review of their performance that's good natured, yet a lot of the time it's going to be brutal. It's never personal, it's just business. Now, meetings miss the mark when there's no stated purpose and where salespeople aren't clear on their objectives. What it will do, it will leave them with a sour attitude or typically distracted or just not present on the meeting, and it will kill their vibe in their further sales calls. So I'm going to use this outline I'm going to walk through to make salespeople look forward to your meetings, leave more motivated and actually equipped to succeed. Now, for sales team meetings, essentially the content for the meeting should either come from salespeople having any initial burning questions that pertain to improving their performance, or from the deep quality control that you've actually conducted throughout the day or the week prior from reviewing their results, reviewing their pipeline, and reviewing their activity. So if you've identified across the team that the 80-20 or the most critical skill deficiency across the team is, say, for example, that salespeople are just laying over and giving away payment plans too easily or getting a low level of commitment from the prospect, then an effective way to actually train out this deficiency is by bringing up a gold standard example like a sales call recording of you or another salesperson who displayed both an effective and importantly a repeatable execution of getting the highest level of commitment appropriate with that prospect on that call. And then from there, you want to make sure you get confirmation from the team that they understand what was done well and why it worked, and then allocate time to following up on it by reviewing future sales calls to make sure they're now able to do it themselves. So this is going to allow you to filter down and decide who requires further one-on-one training to make sure that they're executing on it effectively. Doing this right the first time will make sure that you don't keep flip-flopping back and forth trying to solve the same skill deficiency or problem in your team every single month. Now, for one-to-one weekly or monthly performance reviews or the accountability progression, you want to follow this order that I walk through. And if the salesperson meets the standard at any stage, you can end the meeting there positively. Otherwise, you need to move to the next stage. First, you want to review their past week or month results and then actually make sure that they're on track for projections, because this will stop any storytelling, any nonsense or verbal smoke screens that some salespeople throw out there to avoid accountability. Now, if they're meeting projections, then you can end the meeting positively there. And if not, you need to move to pipeline. So second, you want to assess their pipeline health. Do they have enough deals to hit targets in the coming weeks or the coming months, and discuss potential deals that they have. Make sure ultimately that their pipeline supports their targets. And if they're on track, you can end the meeting positively there. If not, you want to move to assessing activity. Now, when you're assessing their activity, you simply want to ask two fundamental questions to gauge their effectiveness. Question one is, can you name new opportunities in your pipeline today that weren't here last week or last month? And question two, can you name the existing opportunities that you have moved forward since we last reviewed your pipeline? If poor results and weak pipeline persist, you want to ask yourself some hard questions. So for example, after 2.5 months of stagnant progress, you want to ask yourself, how many more months will you actually tolerate this before you do something about it? Skill number 4, consistent refinement of salespeople's slot utilization. The problem most sales teams have is they either just divide all the leads evenly across every salesperson, and the only way for a top performer to get more opportunity is to take more calls, which eventually will hit a cap, or they just flat out give priority for both lead volume and lead quality to an older salesperson who's taken their foot off the gas, and who, if all the stakes were actually even, would not perform better than a hungry performer on the same team if they were given those leads. Now, it's a very simple fix to make it entirely objective and merit-based. So what you want to do is create tiered standards based on cash collected per booked call for each lead grade. So for example, if the reason why you grade a lead at grade 3 instead of grade 4 is because they're less financially qualified, then you simply want to adjust the cash collected per booked call standard. So whilst it's still geared towards reps to get the maximum financial commitment, it at least allows the performer to get the opportunities to sell to some of the high grade leads and prove if they can get it done or not. Ultimately, you want to gamify it so they work for their opportunity and have the feeling that they have an upward ascension as opposed to being capped, right? Too many founders and sales managers miss the mark when optimizing retention through rewarding both up and coming salespeople while still rewarding the current top performer.